enough. As good enough.
Welcome to our weekly podcast, Good Enough, with your co-hosts, Sam Lewis and Mark Lips. Our goal on Good Enough is to interview guests who do not let being perfect keep them from achieving their dreams. Whether it be writing a book, growing a business, achieving some other success, all of these people are heartfelt, passionate, and good enough to be noticed and guests on our podcast. We welcome them, and we also thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
I'm doing great, Sam. How are you doing?
Good. How's the weather there?
A little chilly. You know, this is the part where I don't miss LA, but I do miss the beach weather. Making ice cream on Thanksgiving Day outside, or
wow,
patio, or even Christmas.
Yeah,
patio.
it was 45 degrees here today.
I am loving it. So, but it's I think winter has finally gotten here. It's not, once again, it's not probably as bad as some of your winters, but
we've had some pretty mild winters lately.
Yeah, well, there you go.
But when it goes bad, when there's a blizzard here, it gets serious.
Well, we'll see. We're supposed to be getting, the El Nino. And they've already said one atmospheric river rolled by, mostly up in Washington, but we caught a part of it.
Yeah, I saw that.
That. But anyway, so by the way, listeners, we are supported. Yes, we are. We're supported by our sponsors, and our sponsors are the Ripe Choice Farm Stay and Catering here in Northern California. Happy Friday Neighbors newsletter that comes out every Friday at 4 a.m. every Friday for the last 25 years. Sam?
In Bloomington, Illinois, this end of the country, we're sponsored by Pride Staff Bloomington, a full-service staffing agency, direct hire, temp to hire. We do it all from scoop to nuts, and also by Sam Substack and the Finally Friday Philosophy newsletter that comes out on Friday. Does not really compete with Mark's, to be honest with you.
No,
so you could be on both and enjoy every minute of either one. I'll just say that.
I think with Sam's a lot more cerebral. You'll enjoy that. With me, you'll shake your head going, golly, what is he on?
You're like I said before, you do your community a service with your newsletter.
Yep. No,
I'm not sure I do humanity even a service with mine.
Yeah. No, you do. You say some good things. The stuff on jobs.
Yeah.
Like what I took that and put it in my newsletter.
I saw that. Yeah. Cool.
Work section. I love I love all Mark Twain quotes. Listeners, if he is what do you call it? A Twainophile, or
I don't know.
Anyway, Mark Twain, love Mark Twain, always have. Mark Twain grew up near us, as a matter of fact, just a few years actually before Sammy was born. But Hannibal
was his dog.
Yeah. But anyway, just a great guy. A longtime friend of ours, Mark Twain. Sam, have you read his autobiography that was finally released?
I read, like, it was 2 volumes, and I got through the first volume. That was years ago, because I bought it when
2010
the first one came out.
It came out in 2010, I think.
Yeah, it was a monster.
I loved it. I listened to, I'll tell you, if you listeners, Mark Twain wrote his autobiography and said it had to be released 100 years after his death. He died in 1910 or something like that.
Yeah.
2010 was when it was released, and he started out many times to write this autobiography, and he just couldn't make it happen. And then finally, shorthand was invented, and so he had his assistant. He laid in bed, and he would just rattle off stories, and they were not in order chronologically. And he would just rattle off stories, and she was taking all this down in shorthand, this newfangled shorthand that they created. And I got to tell you, fascinating because the guys that he hung around with, he just talked like on a first name basis, some of these guys, and they're the ones that
what was the story with him when he met Grant in General Grant in Chicago at the Palmer House? And
the thing is, Grant hired Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain, to do his autobiography
because Grant had throat cancer or something.
Yeah, and so he was on a retainer by Grant, and so he talks about that, interviewing and talking to Ulysses S. Grant.
And that's a great if you call it autobiography, it's a wonderful autobiography on leadership and.
Well, but I think it's just fun because, for instance, back then, even though they were driven by horses, they were called cabs. And he said, when you get a hack or a cab back then, holy cow, he said, Europe, those cab drivers are crazy. I mean, if you could have transported him to 2010 driving in a cab in Europe versus 1908 in a horse-driven cab, but apparently, same purpose. They get him to his destination as quickly as possible so that you can turn around and get another fare. So they're galloping along, and he said, it's just crazy. These cab drivers, he said, are nuts. Yeah. Wow. And he's talking about early 1900s, late 1800s. So
I wonder how he'd feel about getting in the cab with no driver.
Oh, yeah.
Like in Phoenix.
You saw where Tesla recalled all of its cars.
Well, yeah, because I'm sure they recalled it because of that movie I saw last weekend.
Oh, is that wild? Leave it alone.
Leave the world alone.
Leave the world alone.
Yeah. All the Teslas running into each other. It's like, well, that did it for me. No, I'm done with Tesla.
Yeah.
Although that movie disappointed me. I wanted my money back, although I didn't pay for it. But
I couldn't.
Right where it got, where I thought it was going to get interesting, it's kind of over.
Yeah.
I was like, here where we find out how you live life without a cell phone and what are these people, and the most.
Well, that's the thing. It kind of left you hanging.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was even worse than M. Night Shyamalan.
It's on Netflix. I don't want to. I'm not a big M. Night fan anyway, but he's hit or miss. By the way, if you look at his movies, I mean,
he's. I mean, I get it. He's experimenting and stuff, but
that one with Mark Wahlberg about a town or something.
The Town.
I thought that was the worst movie. Anyway, listeners, you can watch it, make your own decision. It's very.
Well, they miss points. Like I told Terry, I said,
some people really like it. Some people, like you and me, feel like it didn't quite finish.
Well, the actor saved the movie.
I wasn't satisfied at the end because I had too many other questions. How are they going to do this? How is this going? What's going to happen now? So you wonder, okay, is that the prequel or
Well, I thought they missed a point to make a point in that one house. Remember, the girl ends up at the one house in this really nice house, and the family had built a survivor bunker, and there's food and everything. And I told Terry, I said, because there's a good point there. This family never makes it back to the house to get in their survival bunker. Yeah. That is a problem. You can do all this you want. You may not get back to your bunker.
Yeah. Well, I want to know, I don't know. I still like the neighbor that he said, I'm going to go over to my neighbor.
Kevin Bacon.
Early on. No. When
the other one?
The other guy that showed up, it's his house and he'd Airbnb.
Yeah.
And he showed up and then he said, well, I'm going to go check on my neighbor. By the way, I think I fell asleep, so I missed a lot of stuff. But and then he went over there and there's all this damage and and the guy his arm was cut off or something like that. What? That's when the plane crashed and all that, which I get the EM. What do they got? Remember that The Day After or whatever that movie was where the EMT or EM,
the system goes out. It goes down,
shuts, and that's a real thing. That's a real that could really happen. But
I thought it started off good with a tanker ship running aground. You got my attention.
No, that was fun. I mean, So all that stuff, I can see where the plane crash, the tanker ship, all of that stuff, because, if they do that whatever that is, I can't remember what it is. It's a real thing. We had a guy come and talk to our Rotary Club about it one time, and it's a real deal. But how did that guy get killed? That was on the beach with his arm with the watch on it, and
it didn't really say. It was like
it's just the house is torn up, destroyed.
Yeah.
There's tons of stuff in the yard, and then he finds that guy, his former neighbor, at the beach, but they didn't.
I don't know. Maybe there was a clue there and I missed it. Maybe I slept through part of it. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I did anyway.
Well, so I guess that answers a question about whether AI is going to kill us or not. So,
did you see today? Did you read in the news where the head of what company, the CEO, and some of his direct reports, the COO, all fired because they used AI to write some information in their marketing, and it was wrong. Okay.
Well, that's why you check.
Okay. And this is just low-level stuff. The lawyer who got disbarred because he tried to defend his client using AI stuff that he'd fed into AI and it spit out, and all the information. Judge says when he was using that as his case examples, and the judge said, that didn't happen. That's not real. We looked up those case numbers. That's not a real case. That's not a real case.
That's a Sherlock Holmes movie.
Huh?
That's a Sherlock Holmes movie. What do you?
Well, but I'm telling you, you laugh.
No, I'm not laughing. I just think stupid people are always gonna get caught with smart stuff. And it's like if you were using a research assistant to do research and they gave you bad research, you'd fire them, And
but this is low-level stuff. The research assistant, that's low level. I'm talking about later on where AI gets smart enough to where I can say, what would it take for me to poison the water supply in whatever, what would be the best thing and most stealthy way of bringing down an airplane? I'm telling you, remember, as smart as we get, the criminals and terrorists get just as smart. And you feed that crap into there. That's where I'm saying it's going to be dangerous. Is technology is going to just.
I said that about when when we had to give up our horses and start driving cars.
Yeah, well, or bikes.
What Henry Ford said: if I'd have gave the public what they wanted, I would have gave them a faster horse. A faster horse.
I like that.
Hey, we are 14 minutes afterwards, and I'm gonna.
Tammy's going in to reboot the internet, which may take me down. Oh, you're not. Oh, never mind, honey.
Why is she going to reboot the internet? She just
suddenly
shows up. And you know what I think I'm going to do is reboot the internet.
Yeah, I know. She just does that. She likes to do that.
Looks like the internet's working fine.
Yeah, I know. My little symbol up here says my internet.
No, it's
great.
I need this.
No, Tammy needed some wine. She's cooking in the back.
That's her excuse.
Now she cracks
to
open
get wine is to reboot the internet.
I don't know what you're getting.
How many times a night does she reboot the internet?
That's just our term for it. Rebooting. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
You want another reboot?
Reboot again.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. We're a quarter after. I'll see you on the other side. We'll meet Mike.
Right.
There he is.
Hey.
Hey, Mike. How are you?
Sam, it's another sunny day. I'm still employed. If I wake up and I have that much going for me, things are going pretty good.
The optimistic economist.
I'm not in a hospital.
That's what I call Mike, the optimistic economist.
Yeah, there we go. Because,
Mike, this is Mark, my friend out on the West Coast, Clear Lake, California. Mark, this is Mike, my friend. I've known Mike for a few years, and Mike did some presenting for us at the Economic Development Council, and I think maybe a chamber meeting or two. I can't remember. But Mike and I have kind of hooked
Yeah.
up in the last few months. Just I think we saw each other at the Divine Affair and started talking about some things.
Yeah.
But listeners, I want to give you just a little taste of Mike's biography here. He's an independent consulting economist. He is the contracted business development manager for Decisions Innovation Solutions, an analytics consulting firm based in Des Moines, Iowa. Boy, barely got that out.
That's a tough one.
And he consulted on behalf of the USDA, the United States National Food and Agricultural Organization. Mike served as a senior economist and policy analyst for the Illinois Farm Bureau from 2004 to 2023. He also served concurrently as executive director of the Illinois Wheat Association from 2018 to 23. He's got an arm's length, and I will post this on his full bio on our website. But welcome, Mike. I'm glad you can make it. I've always had great, interesting conversations with you. You kind of preempted this thing with sending us, and I thought maybe this would be a good place to start, the good news about the economy. A friend of mine, a financial planner, and I were talking yesterday, and he was telling me how bad things are. And I was like, I don't know. I just don't feel that. And then 2 hours later, you send me this. I'm like, well, there's obviously a difference of opinion. So, well, you talk a little bit about the good news, Mike. But by the way, Mike's lived all over the world. He's been everywhere and done everything. He gave me a little insight into what it's like in Gaza. This guy's been to Gaza. And so why don't you kind
of a place that I want to go back to, by the way.
Yeah. He probably less so now for sure, right?
Yeah.
So why don't you give us the good news? You know, economists tend to, I mean, maybe I'm characterizing them too much, but tend to focus on the bad news. And
I think economists are maybe a little bit more conservative, partly because you always have people out there in the business community that are boosterisms, and whether it be Wall Street Journal crowd, people, involved with the equity markets, consultants, they just don't like to speak negatively. It doesn't go over well with business people. It does not go over that well with, economic or business consultants or business advisors. So economists are not business advisors generally. They're more like weathermen. They're like saying, well, this is what the weather looks like. And so they're a little more comfortable with being, hopefully more neutral and in the middle, but very realistic, and so but they always have that on the other hand, and of course the famous quote, right. Lyndon Johnson, go get me a one-handed economist. So on the other hand,
I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, I'm using it.
On the other hand, things, I guess I'm gonna put the negatives out there first, or at least the dark clouds, or why people might think things aren't going very well. And because there's only three that I can think of that are really halfway serious. You have to know this is the overall weather pattern for the next 6 months. Number one is we are on an unsustainable path of government expenditures. And I blame economists somewhat for this because they did not speak out much against a few of their brethren who 2 and 3 years ago, we got into the pandemic and all this excessive amount of both tax cuts and fiscal stimulus, federal government money being pushed out, and they didn't say much about it. And I think that's sort of bad form on their part. They should have spoken out more. Larry Summers was one of the few, and he ended up finally speaking out on it. Now nobody likes Larry, because he said, this is really, you're going to load us up with debt. And at some point, it's going to have an effect on the economy. And we even had a couple economists. I know one was there in Southern California, I think, in maybe Riverside, UC Riverside, if I recall correctly. One of them said, they came up with this new monetary economics theory, which was atrocious, was not absolutely any kind of a theory, should have been put down immediately, and nobody wanted to say anything. So anyway, point being, we spent a whole lot of federal money with debt that is debt financed, deficit financed, and that puts us on a path that's not sustainable. Therefore, we're going to have some trade-off in the future, either inflation or higher interest rates that are going to weigh everybody down. Money that would have been available for the government to spend 10 years from now, millennials are going to want that money being spent, and it's not going to be there. They're not going to, and plus the interest rate payments that are just going to go for paying interest rate are going to be very high.
Well,
That's one negative. That's one
okay.
negative.
To stay on that negative,
Yeah.
to play devil's advocate, during that COVID, during the pandemic, I mean, how many people were saved from going under because they weren't
Right.
capitalized, small businesses and stuff like
Right.
that? I mean, what would have been the answer? I mean,
Yeah, and that's the second
there's a lot
guess.
of people who took advantage. They also say, people didn't want to go back to work because they're still getting money, all of these things. But what about the guys who were able to stay in business only because they had that money?
There's a couple arguments that are in favor of that. There are a couple arguments against it, or I shouldn't say that balance that. I don't think any economist would say it was unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
What they say is it was too much.
Well,
it was an awful lot thrown in the fireplace unnecessarily,
or been a little more fine-tuned on,
a little more focused, and also it
who
was
was getting that money.
and sustained way too long.
Yeah,
it lasted a lot longer
Too long.
than it needed to.
It was following tax cuts too.
Yes. I mean, which was reckless on the part of that. So you just had a lot of what economists look at as one big basket of populist economics that we're going to pay for. So that means that set up the cards where the Federal Reserve, that set up the cards for inflation, and it wasn't by any means. I don't think most economists would primarily blame fiscal stimulus for inflation. They would blame the Federal Reserve Bank for lowering the way they lowered interest rates, for how much they accelerated the money supply. Remember, interest rates are the price of money. And so, if you lower those interest rates, you're lowering the price of money, and you're going to cause inflation. That's all there is to it. They go hand in hand.
but
the only way
they were, people suspected the interest rates were going to go down, and they make a comment? Wasn't the headline that keeping interest rates the same, they're not lowering?
Correct. Now they are. So what happens is that the Feds basically had to put the brakes on the economy in order to let aggregate supply catch up to aggregate demand. And we had essentially excessive aggregate demand for the amount of aggregate supply that we had. And so that fueled inflation a lot. And so then the only way you can really get out from under that, you have to break the expectations of future price increases. That's the problem with inflation, is that it's recursive, so that the reason you have inflation is because people are expecting prices to go up. They start banking on it. They bank on it when they ask for a pay raise. They bank on it when they pay their employees. They bank on it when they buy things. They start buying things now because they think it's going to cost them more next year. Yeah. And that fuels things. That becomes price bubbles. So to stop that, you have to convince people the game's over. We've threw all the furniture into the fireplace. The room's going to get very cold. So you better quit banking on those future price increases. To do that, you have to kind of put the hammer down on the economy. And so the Feds, I would say they pretty much, rather than putting the hammer really down on it, they tapped the brakes. They just kind of kept pumping the brakes and slowing the car down. Now, the price we've paid for that has been that we've had a more sustained rate of inflation over a longer period of time. But 3% doesn't sound so bad. And that's kind of where we're at now, 3.5%. What that really means is that over the last 4 years, we've had about a 20% erosion in most people's real income, 20% erosion in their purchasing power, disposable, what they can actually get out there and buy. But that's over a 4-year period of time. And hopefully it'll come down a little bit further. We're on a trajectory. So let's get to the good news. So that was the bad news, really, most of it. The good news is we are getting that inflation down. It is around 3.5%, popped up just a little bit last month. The Feds seem to be very committed to getting it down to like 2%, which would be great. Remember, the second largest cohort population group in the United States are baby boomers. There's 10,000 a day retiring. I think it's $1 million per year. Well, they're on largely fixed income. Even if they're still working, they're working on mostly on half fixed income, half non-fixed. And even a 3.5% inflation rate is pretty serious for them, because they're planning to stay alive 20 years. You're going to whack half their disposable income, even if you increase Social Security a little bit. But are you going to be able to increase Social Security with the debt financing we've engaged in? I would say not. It's going to hit a wall.
Or another strategy would be just to live just 10 years more.
That's the other way. Do like the Canadian Healthcare Service does.
I'm not gonna make 20. I'm just gonna do 10.
There is an economist out there, and a lot of other economists have followed him, who said he calculated the optimal time for voluntary suicide is if you're in good health, is when you're 86 years old. He said, I'm not gonna live past 86.
86.
86. A lot of other economists said, well, we'll wait and see what you feel like when you turn 86.
Well, that is good. And another one of your good news lists on here, and this is the question you and I had talked about over lunch a little bit about these baby boomers are dying and they got a lot of money, and there's going to throw a lot of money to millennials, and those so how does that mix in with all this other stuff that you got?
So you do have the good and the bad of that is it's going to probably maintain and maybe even increase the rather poor distribution of income we have in the United States, a polarization of income, and that has political effects and instability. But the good news is, because that's why I put it on the list, is you do have this transfer going on. You're going to have a lot of baby boomers. Certainly the top 20% have a tremendous amount of wealth. We have the highest number of people in the United States that will never have to work again because of the amount of inheritance they're getting from their parents. Trust fund babies, the highest number we've ever had.
I don't think Mark's one. I don't think I'm one.
I'm not either. Yeah. So that's going to be
Mark will have to haul in his own casket.
Yeah. No, I told him just put me under a tree or something. Yeah.
Very good. So that means a sustainability to consumption is going to last a long time, regardless of what we do with taxes. So we've got that transfer of wealth going on. You've got, I consider it good news, but not everybody does, massive immigration. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not a fan of unmanaged immigration. I think it's really a bad policy. However, it does have positive economic effects. And we're not calculating that into the labor force numbers. And the labor force numbers have gone up just a little bit here in the last few months, which is positive. We're keeping unemployment down, below 4.6%, I think.
Yeah, it's like 3.6.
Oh, maybe I think
nationwide it's below 4.
Nationwide, it might be
like
3.5.
3.9, or nationwide. Okay. In McLean County, it's 3.6.
Very reasonable, and it's with more people getting up off the couch, shutting off the video games, and going back in to look for jobs. So that's all positive. And then you've got this group, we don't know how many there are. We got somewhere between 2 to 3 million. That's a lot. We only have a total labor force of about 160 million in the United States, right?
Was it you that were telling me you overheard the guy say, we need to steal their children?
No,
somebody was telling me that they saw, I was talking about this immigration thing, and they said,
be a good idea.
Guy said, well, the fix for our workforce problem is we got to steal everybody else's
children from abroad. Yeah, to balance it out.
Like, well, I wouldn't want that in a soundbite, but he might not be wrong.
No, that has been happening. The United States stands out different than Western Europe for exactly that reason. It's the immigrants that have been saving us. City of Chicago definitely was saved by the massive immigration. Pew Research, which is fairly liberal leaning, calls it the largest mass migration in human modern history, was the mass migration of Mexicans from Mexico into the United States between 1995 and 2007. And that saved the city of Chicago. We had an increase here in Illinois out of a population of about 13 million people, an increase of 1.5 million just from Mexicans moving up during those years.
Wow.
So people have no idea how much this mattered to our economy. Those people now, they're hardworking folks. Right. They are the ones who are, they're cutting your dog's hair at Petco, and they're married,
scrambling your eggs, and
they're married to an American. Their kids are in your school system. They've been here 10 years. They're the DACA crowd now, and now we're getting a second wave of that. I went through a plant, one of the largest meat processing plants. It was up in Iowa, I think. And about 3 years ago, almost all the workers were Latinos. And I asked the HR manager in an amazingly candid response. She told me that about half of them, by her estimation, did not have approval to be working here. So
were those full-time employees all year round, or were they seasonal? Because
no, they were good.
Well, here's how they do it, and I know this to be a fact, but and not through us, but there's a factory that employs about 450 people, not far from here. I'd say within a 50-mile radius. And I knew the HR manager, went same as you, Mike, went on the tour. And I said, I realized there's a lot of Hispanic. And she said, yeah, I'm guessing that half of these people are
unauthorized,
undocumented. I said, well, how do you have to do I-9s for your company? She goes, they're through a staffing agency. I don't hire them.
Right. Well, and a ton of them have fake IDs.
She said she brought a kid into her office. She said, this guy can't. He's got to be 15, 16 years old, and he had an ID for a 35-year-old man.
Yeah. You can buy them over the internet.
Yeah.
The FBI busts those rackets every once in a while.
So we do I-9s on everybody, and those numbers often don't match is how you catch them. They don't line up. But
right.
Obviously, this company that they're working with is not doing I-9s. They're getting workers, then that plant would shut down if they did not have those workers.
Yep. And hard work boosts an economy. Motivated workers juices an economy. So, I'm seeing some positives there. And also with the inflation, like I say, some of these prices are going to come down. Fuel has already come down. I think food prices, which have been the worst aspect of this inflation. It's been unusual. 6, 7, I think for next year, the USDA forecasts a 7% increase in restaurant prices, 5.5% in food prices. That's pretty bad because you got to eat. It's not avoidable like other price increases, but I think they'll come back down. I've seen it throughout my 35-year career. I've watched food prices almost always do cycle back down eventually because it's easy to grow more food. And people don't keep eating more food, than what they have. Oh, another good news. There's no reason to believe that we're going to have mass starvation. We lost half the wheat production capacity of Ukraine, and yet people forecasted famine. No, that didn't happen. That took a year, one 12-month cycle for Brazil to make up for all the loss of Ukraine wheat production. So the capacity for us to produce food and ship it around the world is fantastic, and I think it's going to just improve. I understand people's concerns about climate change. We do have almost a permanent mega drought west of the Mississippi. Once you get West Iowa out, will continue to affect crops. But what people don't tell you is the 4 states up north against Canadian border, the Dakotas, Minnesota, and I guess Wyoming or Montana, they have increased their corn production 30% because of climate change. They're growing corn in Canada because of climate change. And Illinois' corn and soybean production is the highest it's ever been. So,
it's climate change.
It's shifting where it grows. It's shifting where the food grows.
Or it might be working against you, or it might be working against you 1 year and working for you 4 years from then. We had a drought, 2 or 3 years, and then last year, man, my vineyard was double.
It'll recharge.
You said your harvest was excellent this year, right, Mark?
Gosh, we harvested double what we did the year before. And even though it's a new vineyard, so we're going to always do a little more each year because it's not 7 years old yet. It's only 4 years old.
The only problem, Mike, is that his family drinks the
produce.
No.
They call it resetting the internet or something.
Smaller vineyard just for the drinking. The other vineyard, I sell the grapes to afford the drinking.
Mark, I'm really curious. You're a vineyard owner. How are, in specialty crop world, here in Illinois, where 80% of what we sell for the whole state, 80% of all agricultural revenues, including every four-legged animal, et cetera, 80% is just corn and soybeans. How's that for specialization? So we're very curious. So for us, grapes are a specialty crop. they might not be a specialty crop in your county, but how's the labor situation with that?
That's actually, the increase in grapes here has over the last in Lake County has increased, I think, something like almost 50%, 43, 45.
Wow.
And ag is down. Pears that used to be like, we were the home of Bartlett pears, and our Lake County pears are prized, but they're down dramatically.
Just because of price or
just because not being able to support price and
people don't like to eat pears.
No, it's like during the droughts and all of that, people have switched out pears for vines. People
I see.
Yeah. You had a big switch out toward what was it? Almonds?
Almonds take a lot of water, though.
I thought so too.
That's our state nut, but almonds take a lot of water. So
there's a joke in there.
That's a huge thing here in this. When you get to the Central Valley here, water is the new oil. I mean, it's
So you do have that issue. There's no doubt. I mean,
but we're hoping we'll get another wet. Hope we can get another wet winter, and then they worry because as of last winter, all of our reservoirs filled up, the lakes filled up, everybody filled up. So if we get another one of those, how much more is going to be flooding? Of course, some people will tell you, I hope my place floods, because they want,
because you could sell the water out, right?
They want that they want that groundwater, because most of us are on wells, aquifers and things like that. And
if you did, Mike asked about the labor situation out there. What is the labor?
We have a lot of migrant workers. It's I'm trying to remember what they call it, H2, H9.
Yeah, H2A program.
Yeah. H2A program. But I think there's an underbelly to that, in that they're in the H2A program and they finish their 6 weeks or whatever it is, however long the season is, and they're put up for that time by the host.
The employer.
But there is I was reading actually just recently that there is a thought that the thinking is that they then go back to Mexico. And some people say they're not going back to Mexico.
Right. That's the problem with the H2A program, is that you're not allowed
somewhere else, and they're very transitory. So the kids are not in regular schools going to any kind of consistency, and that's
right. But that's interesting. You're getting H2A. It was such a problem with the fruit. You're familiar with the fruit belt along eastern Michigan because of the lake effect on Michigan shoreline. So you have about a 15-mile depth of warm climate along there during the winters. It takes the edge off those Midwestern spells of cold weather, Arctic weather. And so you have a fruit belt along there, and mostly stone fruits and cherries and stuff. And they got so desperate for labor and for that, and work with that H2A program, the Michigan Farm Bureau started a subsidiary that was the only purpose was to go to Mexico in buses and pick up workers, and drive them back up to Michigan.
Yeah. Well, I have someone who manages our Merlot vineyard. And I don't know how many H2A workers he has, but I've talked to some of the other, like Beckstopper, which is one of the largest landowners in Napa and Lake County of vineyards, grapes, and they all use H2A and
interesting.
Spend thousands of dollars a month in rent to pay for these guys for a place to
I
stay.
tell you, bringing guest workers in. We have a worker from Ukraine. He was a sponsored worker. He was from Mariupol. He runs a CNC machine. He ran a plant that did machining. Speaks excellent English. He is really, really smart guy. But I wasn't really prepared for this. There's all these things that are in the United States that he doesn't have any comprehension of. Like when he got his first check, he was like, I thought I was getting paid this amount of money. I said, well, you are. And he says, but I only got this much. I said, well, there's these taxes, there's unemployment. There's what? What is that? Oh my God, this poor guy.
That's funny.
Then, like health insurance, where he was at, it wasn't a big deal. I mean, they all had it. Here it's like I guess I didn't know this. This was new to me this week. There's a guest. You can go on a sponsored worker health insurance plan paid by the United States government, partially. Because otherwise they wouldn't get insurance. I mean,
Right.
Unless you got obviously a company that paid insurance, but and so him trying to navigate, between this plan and this plan and this plan, and we can't hardly do it. And we're here, we grew up here.
Right.
So it's like, because I thought, well, maybe we could bring some more workers like that over, but you have to have like a support system or something here ready to go for them when they get here to walk, handhold them to get them through this. I don't care how smart they are. They are not ready for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, Sam. That's interesting.
It's funny because his wife, they got one car. They came over together. She takes the car to her job during the day, and then he works an evening shift. And I said, well, how are you going to get to work? He goes, I have a bicycle. And I don't live far from the plant. I ride a bicycle.
Yeah.
My daughter who works for me, Candace, says, gosh, it's raining tonight. He's got to ride this bicycle. I said, well, 5 weeks ago, they were dropping bombs on his head. He's probably got a different perspective of what a bad environment or situation is going to work.
But getting back to migrant, immigration and the workers is, a lot of the farmers around here, the big productions that use a lot of the H2A and these workers, they say, that no one works hard. The pear packing plant, no one works harder than these guys. These guys are the hardest.
Totally.
So they have to maintain them. I mean, if you're bringing in that many workers, they do. I mean, that's been my experience.
Give them a little health insurance. They get dental. They put them up. They go around
housing.
Some people build
nice
houses, and certainly more than what they were getting in Mexico. They're getting some good places, but their work ethic is. People brag about it.
They say nobody outworks a Mexican. I've seen it. They're unbelievable. They're the
we do. You may have heard it. You may have a program like this. We do a program called Ag Venture, and I was a part of that program this time. One of the classmates, and one of the students, I guess, or whatever you want. But they take in and you do a deep dive, and for being a city kid who just got here 3.5 years ago, you do a deep dive into the ag world. It's an all-day program with first one was going through the vineyards and learning about grapes.
Yeah, they do that here in McLean County.
Yeah, and then we did walnuts, we did olives, and we did the grapes, walnuts, olives, grapes, and
Sam, I want to go out there and take that.
Yeah. But and then speakers all day. Those were just the field trips to see these operations and how they commercialized harvesting the walnuts and the olives and the vines and agriculture and pears. That was the other one, pears. And fascinating stuff. But then guest speakers talking about, GMO, and let me tell you, it was eye-opening because, if you go into the city and you mention GMO, it's like a curse word. It's like, bad.
I don't know what it is.
GMO, not GMO. But you know what? Thank goodness for some of the genetically modified stuff out there, because it's just making us better now.
Yeah, some economists tracked this about 10, 15 years ago, and they showed that if it had not been for GMOs, we would have had a famine, global famine. And so it saved us, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And that was in this, and that's the kind of things that you find out when you move to a rural area, like environmentalists. Listen, in the city, got to save the trees, got to save the trees. Well, you don't think a farmer or a rancher or anybody else wants that. They're there. They want to save the trees.
Yeah.
But they also want to thin the trees so that their house doesn't burn down with the next forest fire.
Right,
they want to clear the brush so the house doesn't burn down. So, okay, there may have been a little ground squirrel in there, but
he can live somewhere else.
What do you got against ground squirrels, Mark?
You get a different perspective, and finally, the state is beginning to see what these old ranchers and the old farmers, the way they used to work, and how they didn't have fires back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and it wasn't until the 90s when you couldn't clear something away because there was a blue butterfly that lived right on that branch, and we had and it just created a lot of ill will and destruction and loss of property, and of course some people will say, well, why build a house, and that's not there, that belongs to the bears and the blue butterflies and all that. Well, and I'm as much of an environmentalist as anybody. I've got solar, I've got I had rain barrels at the beach, I had edible gardens, I had but boy, you do get to see there's extremes, and you got to watch extremes.
Mike, I must change the subject kind of a little bit. I don't think I've ever asked you this. Why did you get into economics?
Okay, this is a little strange story maybe, but so I was traveling around the world after I was a Peace Corps volunteer, and I was not an economist at all. And in fact, I did grow up on a farm, and I taught school in Fiji for 2 years. I was teaching industrial tech courses, industrial arts for kids with
well, let me get this. How old were you? And you were in Fiji and
23. And so I hitchhiked the length of New Zealand. And then I worked in the outback of Australia. And then I traveled overland from Australia to London. And it took me 9 months to do this whole thing, from the time I left Fiji to the time I washed up in London. And what I saw in commonality around the world was agriculture. And I even had this rancher, I was working on his ranch out in the middle of Australia, and he immediately was asking me, what's going on in the United States with people not eating meat? Is that going to take off? He was worried about, this was 1982, he was worried about it. So I realized, wow, there's a real thread here, a connection all around the world. And so when I got back, I thought, I loved my life growing up on a farm, and I thought I really went the wrong road. I should have been in agriculture. So I went back to school at the age of 24, did a second degree, and I decided on the spot I wanted to be an agricultural economist. That was the area I wanted to go in. So did a second degree in applied economics, actually, and that's just at BS in economics. Went on to Clemson University for my master's in ag econ, and been an ag economist ever since, and totally enjoyed it.
Wow, what a great! You should speak at there. You speak at Rotary.
Don't ever give up. It's funny. I've got several guys who are professors who were a lot like me, and they didn't. Let's say they had to do a lot of bootstrapping to get to where they're at, and we confer with each other. It's kind of fun, It was just like nobody thought we were going to make it.
What's interesting is, it's part of. Sometimes I say that everybody should start out in junior college, because most of those teachers are people who walk the talk. If they're teaching a culinary class, they probably used to own a restaurant or currently do.
Yeah. My best econ teacher was a farmer there around Benton, Illinois, and he was a wonderful teacher. So He's
But I
using
mean,
ag
that's-
examples
Yeah,
all the time.
a real
Bushels
world
of corn,
experience.
cattle,
you
this,
go
that.
you go into the 4-year schools, and a lot of those professors just they
Yeah. They're
they were
academics.
taught to
They're
teach.
right.
They became they came out of academia. They didn't come out
Yes,
of the
right.
workforce. Came right out of academia, went into teaching, but with no real just theoretical
World experience. I know. And I did go through, I
I
started out
love
as,
that you're being an ag economist. You've been there. You've had boots on the ground. So yeah.
it's fun.
Well, we're
But I wanna
down to
get out
2
to-
minutes here, guys, and I want
I
to. We
just
got
wanna-
a couple
I
things
wanna
to
say-
do before we finish. But
wanna
first
say,
of all, we're
Mark,
going to take a picture. So everybody, look
Okay.
at the camera like I'm taking a picture. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay.
There you go.
All right. Wait, Mike, what were you going to say?
I was just gonna say, it's been an incredible pleasure to meet you, Mark.
Ah.
I've totally enjoyed it. I want to come out. First of all, you're welcome to come and stay at my old 1930s house here in Normal. And you can stay here.
1904, buddy. 1904.
All right, I love it. I love old homes.
We found a 1905 V nickel in our front yard.
That's really cool. And I would love to, after I read about Lake County, right? So I
Yeah.
read about it last night. I was entranced. I was like, this is an amazing county.
It's a cool place. It's a
It
very
would be
cool
really
place.
neat. And it's got some things going for
So you
it.
can
and
look
I'm
us
really
up.
intrigued.
Go to the ripe, RIPE, like a ripe fruit. The
Yeah.
ripe choice.
This will all be on the all these will be on the webcast when we
Okay.
when I publish this.
ripechoice.net. And,
Okay.
that's us. But
Hey, we're down
Okay.
to less than a minute.
sure. And so
Yep.
we decided to come up here. And I got to tell you, Mike, it's been great talking with you.
Yeah, I knew this was
Enjoyed
going to
it.
be a good one.
Once
Sam,
again,
thank you so
Mike,
much.
I'll
for the
see you around
invitation.
town. I appreciate it so much. I thank you. This is going to be a good podcast. And until we cross paths again here soon.
oh, you got to have you on again, Mike. You've
Yep.
been more than good enough.
More than good enough.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. You guys are great. I appreciate it. All right. Talk to you later.
Goodbye.
Bye.